Impeachment's not working the way Democrats thought it would. Mayor Bloomberg is in the mix, running for president. Joe Biden talks about running mates. Whatever happened to the low-level attorney and the whole FISA scam? Socialists don't really like charity, and the Harvard-Yale climate protest for lunatics. That and more coming up on the Buck Sexton Show. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you here with me on the Buck Sexton Show. It is Turkey Week. No, not like Erdogan turkey. Turkey gobble gobble. Exciting stuff. Thanksgiving coming up. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you all are too. I can tell you this. I'm going to engage in intermittent fasting for at least a part of a day, the day of Thanksgiving, so that I can just do one of those 3,000 or 4,000 calorie single sitting Thanksgiving meals. It's not that hard. When you throw stuffing into the mix, anything is possible. See, the real champions know that you take the stuffing and you mix in some of the gravy. And when you get the gravy and the stuffing together, and then it's sort of, then you can pile that in easily 3,000 or 4,000 calories. I do not recommend you try this at home. Your belt will feel tighter, but nonetheless, that's what we've got facing us this week, which is exciting. You know, normal Americans across the country woke up this morning, probably not thinking at all about impeachment because most of them don't care, and that's understandable. But the ones who were paying attention last week had to wake up today and say to themselves, what a farce this whole thing is. Here we are, after being told all last week that the president has committed horrific offenses against the Constitution. He's a really bad person. He has to be removed from office. If he doesn't get removed, then horrible things will be this republic. What is he guilty of exactly? Well, the charge changes every day. We don't really know. Depends on when you ask, who you ask. It's not the way it's supposed to be in a criminal proceeding. But, this is not a criminal proceeding. It's a political proceeding. But it's not about politics, they say. It's about our institutions. The goalposts move so fast, I feel like I'm watching a ping pong match and just looking side to side to side. I don't know what's going on anymore. But the problem that Democrats face right now is that last week wasn't good for them. Didn't work the way they thought it would. Did not have this Watergate moment where Republicans finally start turning, or even independents turn in large numbers. Here is Fox News host Chris Wallace, who is not pro-Trump. I mean, you can tell by his grade. He finds the president personally distasteful. I think that's quite clear from the way that he covers all this stuff. But here he was just mentioning on Fox a poll that they had on, well, where things were before we had Fiona Hill and the guy with the bow tie and these other State Department figures, Sondland, strange fellow. Before that happened and after that happened, here's what the polling says. Play 17, please.
Public opinion has begun to actually move against you. And I want to put up a poll. Back in early October, people favored impeachment and removing the president by 52% to 46, or plus 6. Now, that's turned to 48% for removal and 50% against, or minus 2. That's an 8-point swing against removing the president while you've been making your best case.
Well, they've been making a case that is completely stacked in terms of the process. You can't bring the witnesses that Republicans would want to bring forward. Adam Schiff has been ruling over this thing with an iron fist. All kinds of dishonesty. They took their best shot last week at impeaching the president, and they're still going to impeach him, by the way. How could they not at this point? How could they back away? They were so wrong about this all along that people are saying now, maybe they'll just vote for censure. Well, if they just vote for censure, that means it wasn't serious enough to impeach. If it wasn't serious enough to impeach, why would they bring this proceeding in the first place? Why would they bring this proceeding in an election year? Why not just let the people decide? I think we know the answer to that. They must impeach him. There's no way around it now, given what the Democrats have done. They've backed themselves into a corner, and they want to impeach him. This isn't reluctant. Nancy Pelosi and Schiff and Schumer, they hate this guy. They hate him because he has pulled back the curtain and let the American people see what a bunch of feckless clowns run the federal government. And not just elected office, by the way. I'm talking also about the Comeys and Brennans and Strucks and Pages and oh my. All of them. So they hate him for this. So now there are really two camps here of Democrat. There's the wrong, but at least trying to sound reasonable about impeachment side of this, where you have people like, for example, Amy Klobuchar saying that, oh, but it's very impeachable what he did, even though people don't seem to think it is who didn't hate Trump in the first place. Play 18.
So have you seen enough evidence, even though you're eventually going to have to be a juror if it goes to trial, whether to acquit or convict, have you seen enough evidence to date for this to go to trial?
Yes, I made this very clear that I think this is an impeachable offense. And all of the senators, including our Republican colleagues, are going to have to make this decision. And I thought one of the really good points that was made earlier on your panel was the point that you can't just close your eyes to this. You think about back in Watergate, they didn't close their eyes when a paranoid president who was up for election and looking for dirt on a political opponent got involved in having people break into an office and steal information on their opponents from a filing cabinet. Well, this is the global version of Watergate, where a president is trying to get dirt on a political opponent from a world leader. That is basically what happened here. And so that's the case that we'll be making.
That is not basically what happened here. Asking for an investigation is not the same thing as getting dirt. There's a legitimate basis for the investigation of the Bidens. Don't let the media obscure this. The Bidens have given plenty of cause for people to look into their conduct, including the former vice president and now sitting senator. Right? People look at this and say, hold on a minute. Joe Biden had a son who was making $50,000 a month. There's certainly the appearance of corruption. The appearance of corruption is how all corruption investigations begin. They don't know necessarily there was corruption, but it looks like there might have been. And yet they tell us that this is just digging for dirt. No. If the president had said, fabricate something on my opponent, make something up so that we can run with it in our election, that would be different. But the reality right now is that they are pretending that this is somehow illicit. And they're hoping that people will just buy them because of the hysteria. Here's what Max Boot, speaking of hysterics, has to say about all of this. Play clip 1, please.
I mean, this is the very definition of a high crime and misdemeanor, and it is very frustrating to me to hear even Republicans like Will Hurd, who I think are somewhat more fair-minded than the Jim Jordans or Devin Nunes's of the world, even Will Hurd saying this is improper but not impeachable. Well, to Congressman Hurd, I would say, if this is not impeachable, what is impeachable? This is the most impeachable conduct I think we have ever seen from a president of the United States, and we have to hold him account no matter what the politics are.
The most impeachable, so more impeachable than Watergate. They're not even sure what the conduct is, but it is more impeachable than Watergate. I know you're probably tired of this. By the way, I meant former Senator Joe Biden. I know you're probably sick of hearing about impeachment. I certainly am, but they're not going to stop. The problem that we have to face is that they'll just continue on with this. They're not going to give it up. They're not going to move past it. They're just going to say, okay, well, hold on a minute here. We need to just find new evidence. We need to find new information about how guilty he is. But there's a little bit of a sneaking suspicion, I think, among some of the Democrats that this may not work out the way they thought. They knew it was a wild card. They knew they were taking a political risk in this whole process. And they didn't really think through what the long term would be here. For example, what happens when the Senate trial is underway and the Senate is Republican majority? All the arguments that we've heard about this is a political process, those will be applicable to the Senate. Now, that doesn't stop the completely dishonest media from lying to all of you about what happened, but they're going to act like there's some difference between what happened in the House and what will be happening in the Senate. Oh, the Senate is a different chamber, a different body. Can't have the same expectations for its conduct of the impeachment at that point, the trial and possible removal of a president. That's what they will say. Somehow it's different. All we really have to know is the difference is a function of who has power, who has the votes. They don't. Therefore, the rules will have to be different. But Adam Schiff has already made it quite clear. The shiftiest fellow in the entire United States Congress. He has made it clear that if Republicans subpoena him, he will not testify about this. Play clip 6.
President Trump just yesterday said that you yourself should be compelled to testify if the House moves forward and it goes to the Senate. Would you be willing to do so in the House Judiciary Committee? Would you be willing to do so in the Senate?
There's nothing for me to testify about, Jake. And I think if the president or his allies in the Senate persist in this, it really means they're not serious about what they're doing. And
well, they would cite, sorry for interrupting, but they would cite David Kendall, who was President Clinton's attorney during that impeachment. He got to cross-examine Ken Starr. Now, I understand you're not an independent counsel, but you did lead the investigation.
This is not a insignificant distinction, Jake. I'm not a special counsel. I don't work for a separate branch of government. I'm not in the Justice Department. I am more in a position that Henry Hyde was during the Clinton impeachment, or Peter Rodino during the Nixon impeachment, or Sam Ervin. They were not fact witnesses. What would I offer in terms of testimony? That I heard Dr. Hill in an open hearing say such and such? That's not pertinent. The only reason for them to go through with this is to mollify the president, and that's not a good reason to try to call a member of Congress as a witness.
Adam Schiff is playing dumb here, and he's hoping that people are so dumb that they won't figure out exactly what's going on. We all know what he would be asked about if he were to testify. It's not sitting and listening to Fiona Hill, who just blathered on about nonsense in Russia and Ukraine policy for hours. Nothing particularly new or interesting. But it's not that. We want to know, when did you start talking to this whistleblower, and what did you tell the whistleblower, and what kind of coordination did you engage in? That's what we would want to know, and the problem that he would have is he's lied about this, almost certainly. Does anyone really think he doesn't know who the whistleblower is? Does anyone think he doesn't know who the whistleblower is? If he were to be forced to plead the fifth, wouldn't at that point it be quite clear exactly what happened? So there's a reason why you're noticing a bit of a silence today around this issue. You're not seeing them push quite as hard. They're trying to recover from the expectations that they had set up for their anti-Trump audiences last week, that it was going to be the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency, for real this time. They've told us that how many times, but it was really going to happen this time, the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency. But no, it wasn't. In fact, as we noted at the top of the show, an 8-point swing in favor of those saying the president should not be impeached and removed from office. And this, you would think, comes at a time when the president would be most vulnerable to negative public opinion, because they've just taken their best shot. The most damage they could do has been done. Why are we at this point right now? Well, maybe because this whole thing really is a farce. Maybe because it never was going to be what they said it was going to be. They don't have the goods. They are delusional. They are really ill. I mean, Trump has broken them. He has emotionally destabilized and unhinged not just Democrat constituents, but Democrats in elected office too. And so they no longer have the ability. They no longer have the ability to distinguish reality from their own conspiracies. That's possible. That's where I think we are. But it's also why I would note we today have the opportunity to have a discussion about a new entrant into the ranks of would-be presidents, former mayor of New York City, Michael Bloomberg. We will get to it. So we got a billionaire who wants to be yet another billionaire in the race to take out a billionaire. It's almost starting to feel like a lot of rich people get into politics. Something to consider. I don't like dynasties, and if super rich guys want to be in politics, they have the freedom to do so. But it's starting to feel a little bit like we have an oligarchy in this country, my friends. Oh wait, that's what Bernie Sanders always says. Is he going to say the same things about this billionaire? Billionaires and millionaires? Is he going to say the same thing? I think he most certainly will. Because Bernie Sanders is Mr. grassroots support. We'll get to the burn in just a moment. First, let's have a moment where we can hear the basic pitch from. I think they say he's worth 50. I read $50 billion is his estimated worth today. But here's what they say about Bloomberg, or rather, here's what the Bloomberg campaign wants you to know. Play clip 16, please, sir.
But now he sees a different kind of menace coming from Washington. So there's no stopping here, because there's an America waiting to be rebuilt, where everyone without health insurance is guaranteed to get it, and everyone who likes theirs can go ahead and keep it, where the wealthy will pay more in taxes, and the struggling middle class will get their fair share. And jobs that just allow you to get by will become jobs that let you get ahead. Mike Bloomberg for president, jobs creator, leader, problem solver. It's going to take all three to build back a country.
Now, this is true not just of Bloomberg, so I'm not trying to pick on him or his campaign, although we will have some fun with that too. Don't we all find it a little? Isn't it just a little corny, a little bit too much pandering when they do this? Oh, and like the light piano playing and like this this stuff. This is are we a bunch of kids that need to be entertained with these silly commercials? Now, this is true of politics across the board. I understand people do this all the time, but it's all just so Can't we just have a guy up there who's like, this is what I want to do? There we go. Leave it there. But they do these really produced, trying to, these inspirational soundtrack stuff and, fields of wheat. Well, what is it with everyone being obsessed with seeing fields of wheat all the time? Oh, it's like, when was the last time you went? I mean, some of you probably have. When was the last time you went crawling around in a field of corn or wheat? It's been a while, I think.
Just yesterday.
No way. Come on.
Yeah.
Where were you?
I was shucking corn.
Shucking corn? Like
Yeah.
You were out picking corn?
Out in the fields picking corn, yep.
I didn't even know that. So apparently that's why it's in the commercials, because you never know when producer
Yes.
Mark is going to be out there.
I'm a farmer.
In the field. Producer Brandon, when was the last time you went and picked corn? 0 times. So Mark is
I'm just amazed that
Mark
you
is
believe
a Renaissance
me.
man.
Yeah.
He does many things. Us over here, we have Seamless on our phones, and we order. They can bring me any different variety of.
Why do seamless when I can skin my own cow?
Skin a cow.
Yeah.
You really had quite a weekend.
I did. Yep.
Damn. All right, so I said we were going to get to the burn. The burn doesn't like. Bernie Sanders is unhappy. Doesn't like the billionaires coming in. They're going to buy all the ad time. I don't know if I said ad time or air time. It could be either one. But here's the burn saying that Bloomberg doesn't have grassroots support. Play 13, sir.
Mr. Bloomberg, to the best of my knowledge, has very little grassroots support. But he has decided, because he's worth $55 billion, that he can run for president of the United States and spend more money on TV ads, I suspect, than any candidate in the history of the United States.
He is going to flood the airwaves with ads. I think that this is going to be a very instructive moment. Here's my prediction, which I guess we can mark this down and try to remember this. Here's my prediction about where all this is going. I think that Bloomberg will spend more money than any candidate for the presidency in history. Certainly, that's not a bold. I mean, I think everyone thinks that, but I think that dollars in, dollars out, he will have the least effective presidential campaign in history in terms of the spending, how much money is spent, and what he actually gets as support. Let's just remember that you have, during this whole situation, you have in the historical background, Jeb Bush, who spent, I think it wasn't his own money. It was money that had been raised from people who didn't realize that America was not ready for Jeb. But he spent $100 million. $100 million, and I think ended up getting the number of delegates you could count on one hand or something. I mean, it was a total bust. So you can spend, $100 million is a lot of cash for anybody. You could spend a lot. That was in a primary. It wasn't even a general election. Now, you're going to have billions of dollars spent, or you would expect there to be billions of dollars spent on ads and just everything for the campaigns on both sides of this going into 2020. It will be the most expensive campaign in history. I think there's no question about that. But with Bloomberg, he has the kind of money where he could finance the whole thing by himself. Remember, Trump would finance some aspects of his campaign. The campaign would reimburse him. Bloomberg will be in a position to spend it all himself, really. Doesn't have to raise a dollar. Bloomberg is rich enough. I mean, let's be honest. Trump does not have a liquid net worth. I don't think. I'm not trying to upset Trump, especially after he retweeted me 4 times in a row over the weekend. You see that, by the way? 4 presidential retweets of the Buckster. Bam, bam, bam.
Did you have to get cleared by Secret Service or something for that? Like, how does that work?
What do you mean, my retweets?
Yeah.
No, he can just retweet. He just does it.
He just does it? Okay.
He knows the
All
button.
right, I'm just
making
sure we're all kosher here.
President of the United States, leader of the free world, producer Brandon. He's like, this Buck guy, I like his Twitter game. Twitter game, strong. Boom. So 4 in a row. It was pretty awesome, actually. I'm not going to lie. I was in the gym, as one does.
Of course. And
somebody was like, nice retweets. They texted me, and I said, what? And of course, at first, I'm like, oh, God, what did I do now? I look at it, I see the, leader of the free world is like, this guy Buck understands.
Your phone must be blowing up.
It was blowing up. It was quite fun. Yeah. I don't. It doesn't really followers. Yeah, I can never really tell. And I should probably look at it probably got a few hundred here.
I'll do some analytics for you.
Yeah. You do the things with the math, please. It's one of the reasons why we need producer Mark here. The math. I don't do the maths. That's why I'm a radio host. So Bloomberg can spend, though. He can spend. Oh, wait, I was saying about Trump. Trump was not about to write a check for $1 billion to run for president out of his own funds. It wasn't going to happen. Bloomberg could do that. He could just be like, here it is. Here's $1 billion for my president. And it wouldn't affect him or his lifestyle or anything else at all. When you're worth $50 billion, now it's Bloomberg's private company. It's not as simple as it was explained to me by somebody who knows more about this stuff than I do. It's not as simple as just someone who's entirely liquid net worth, like, say, Bill Gates, where he can, because it's a public company, you can just sell the stock. I mean, Bloomberg's a little different, but Bloomberg's super rich. 11th richest person in the country, I think is what they say. So this guy can buy whatever he wants to in terms of media coverage. He also has a media organization, a global one the Bloomberg company employs 19,000 people is what I read this morning. So Bloomberg is going to be in a position to not only buy media coverage and advertisements and all the rest of it, but he also has a massive media organization that has said they're not going to investigate him, obviously, and they're also not going to investigate any other Democrats. So Bloomberg is the news organization of Bloomberg is supposed to be sitting on the side, but we'll have to see if that how that plays out. I'm certainly skeptical of it. So this guy, I think he's going to spend a ton of money. It's not going to work, but when you've got somebody with pockets this deep, this is different. I don't know what Steyer's net worth is. Producer Mark, could you check that for me? I think Steyer is worth, he's clearly also because Bernie's like he's a billionaire. He's on the stage because he's got the billions. But I think Steyer is worth, actually, I don't want to say, he's a hedge fund. You never know with these guys. What is Tom Steyer's net worth? Because that'll matter to because he's going nowhere with any of this.
1.6 billion.
Exactly what I thought. $1 billion. Come on. What a poor fellow.
I feel terrible
Only
for him.
$1 billion.
Ugh.
What a
It must be tough living life like that.
It's tough. $1 billion? See, when you're worth $1 billion, maybe you'll spend like 50 to 100 million on your political aspirations. Maybe. But you're not going to spend more than that. You're not going to spend more. You're not going to spend half your net worth to try to be president when you got almost no shot. When you're worth $50 billion, you may, in fact, say, let's spend $1 billion on this campaign. So we will really test out. Oh, also, it'll be fun to hear Democrats all of a sudden get quiet about money and politics. His opponents won't be quiet about it, but usually the media is, money and politics, and billionaires buy everything with their money. Wait. Oh, you mean that there are super rich liberals out there, and they're constantly trying to influence the national conversation? They control most of the major, or own outright most of the major media outlets in this country. Wow, there are liberal billionaires that are injecting money into things all over America. It's not just the Koch brothers, who, by the way, are socially liberal and open borders, and to call them conservative is a stretch in many ways. So I would just note that Bloomberg, just based on his cash flow, could be able to make a lot of noise on this one. But now we can move on to what does he stand for? Now, I was on the New York City subway this morning, and it was delayed, which quite to producer Mark's chagrin, because he likes to keep it. He likes to run a tight ship here in the Freedom Hut. So I was a little bit late, but it wasn't my fault. You know, it was the fault of the stinky, inefficient, union contract laden, and really embarrassingly inefficient New York City subway system.
Interesting. I saw that the line that you ride, I won't say it on the air, but it was fine this morning.
False.
Yeah.
The E train was delayed.
There were no delays.
There was a delay. I was there, man. I saw it. I was dealing.
I think Buck was home combing his hair, brushing his teeth, taking extra time.
So
yeah,
I bring you that New York City has its problems, to be sure. Bloomberg, as a mayor in a left-wing monoculture, right, in a left-wing political atmosphere where there's really no conservative. Oh, remember, was he a Republican or an independent when he was mayor here? I think he was technically.
He was Republican. He ran Republican.
He was a Republican, right? Yeah. And then because he's like switched. He's one of these guys who switched parties a bunch of times. Okay, so he was a Republican mayor, but he's not a Republican. In no ways this guy. He just was a Republican because it was easy for him with the party system here. But he is a pretty, as statists go, and he is in his mind a benevolent authoritarian. As statists go, he is not grotesquely incompetent the way that, say, Mayor Moron, what's his name? De Blasio. Yeah, they know. Everyone in New York. The great thing about de Blasio is he unifies people. You could be walking around. I could sit down and talk to your run-of-the-mill New York City lib, who's like, climate change, and everything's all scary, and, Trump is Hitler. They say all these things. But I could look at them like, hey, de Blasio's an idiot, right? They're like, oh, my gosh, de Blasio is a buffoon. So at least everyone can be united on that front. And the city has shown some of the lack of acumen, that lack of skill, governing skill that de Blasio brought to bear. Bloomberg was pretty good in some ways. I can't just lie to you and pretend that Bloomberg was a bad mayor. I actually technically, I work for the police commissioner, but the police commissioner works for the mayor. So in a sense, I worked for Bloomberg at one point in the NYPD intelligence division as an analyst. So not a very long time, about a year, but the truth is he was a pretty well-liked mayor, even by rank and file officers. They said the guy's pretty good. He believes in, clean streets and effective police and trains running on time and all that kind of stuff. So as a mayor, he wasn't bad. I can't tell you he's a bad mayor. That wouldn't be true. Much better than the current mayor of New York City, the largest city in the country. As a possible national level political figure, he's an orthodox lib. He is everything that you think of when you think of the progressives in America today on the various issues outside of perhaps some ability to balance a checkbook, which he does have. He does look at math and has some understanding of what works, what doesn't work. But on gun control, he's maniacal. He is a truly anti-Second Amendment guy. On the environment, he's a total believer in climate change. On taxation, he wants the rich to pay more in taxes, he says. But I wish they would just understand that, they keep saying the rich need to pay more in taxes, and then they want to raise taxes on people with a household income of, $250,000 a year or something. That doesn't make you rich. It makes you well off, I get it, but you're not rich. There is no place in America where you make $250,000 in 1 year and you're good. You don't have to work anymore. Doesn't exist. You're not rich. Now sometimes they say they'll raise it to $500,000 a year for a household, but the point is they talk about taxing people at Bloomberg's level, and they love to do this. This is a great way to virtue signal. Bloomberg does it. Warren Buffett does it. Oh, I wish they would charge you more in taxes. They could write whatever they want. They could send any check for any size they want. After they've paid what's due and owed, but they could donate $1 billion a year to the federal government just to help out, just to kind of deal with the deficit a little bit. they're always going to be raising taxes on people in ways that affect far beyond the circle that they talk about of the very rich, the very wealthy. He wants, saying he's going to give health care for everybody. We got to see more of the details in his plan. But he is interesting in this whole race insofar as he has so much money and seems so committed to this that even if his campaign itself is a whole bunch of nothing, he may be in a position to change things for the other candidates. He could be a spoiler in some way that we can't yet see. That's what I think is most likely here. And he's going to spend more money than probably anybody else, and more of his own money. There are a lot of people who are involved in getting access to different Democrat, a lot of people that are involved in these things, and they are not going to like that former Mayor Bloomberg, I should say, doesn't have to go through them. So even though he's a Democrat and he's a doctrinaire liberal, he's from outside the apparatus. So a lot of the DNC folks are going to look at this and say, they want to shut this thing down. Oh, by the way, I wanted to just weigh in on a story that we had mentioned here on the show, and it somehow continues to be a story. This former Representative Katie Hill, she was engaged in a consensual but a sexual relationship with a subordinate on her staff, which is a clear, black and white letter of the law violation of congressional ethics standards. Congress says you can't do this. You're not allowed to be a congressman and have a relationship with somebody who you have the power of hiring, firing, promoting on your congressional staff, paid for by the taxpayer. You can't do it. She did it. There's no dispute about this. But she's a Democrat, she's a woman, and there's always a way to spin this stuff. There's always a way to make it useful for the narrative. And the story has somehow become that Katie Hill is a victim. Initially, it was that she was a victim of revenge porn, which is a very odious practice where someone takes, intimate photos or something that you had consented to for, private purposes, and then someone just releases it out. It's a very dishonorable and gross thing to do. But keep in mind, that's not the fault of anybody who is saying that she should resign from her job in Congress, which she did, because she was having a sexual relationship with a subordinate on her staff, which is not allowed. That is the underlying issue here. But they've tried to turn her into some kind of a feminist liberal martyr. And Brad Stelter asked her about this, and this is where the problem. Play clip 5.
What should people understand about what it's like to see these websites publishing intimate photos, or what it's like to be attacked on Fox News? There's multiple layers here, but what should people know about that experience?
I think it's one of the darkest things that you can experience, and I think that this is what we have to think about is that this isn't just happening to me, right? This is happening to girls and women across the country, and that's why we see. And I was asked about this all the time on the campaign trail by really young, teenagers and girls who are, who experience cyberbullying in different capacities, and who are saying that this is what are you going to do about this, right? And we don't have an answer for that. So we need to figure out that fight. But you also see it as a tactic that is constantly used by the right. Look at what they're doing to the witnesses on the impeachment inquiry. Look at what they're doing to, to try to silence anybody who speaks out in a way that they don't like.
So she broke congressional rules, no question. You could argue, was in a sexual relationship with somebody on her staff that is, just ethically inappropriate in general. She could hire and fire the person. And she's a victim now. But I love this. A victim of the right and Fox News. Everybody gets to be a victim. Even the victimizer, if it's a liberal and a female, gets to be the victim all of a sudden. What is this? She resigned. She lost her job. Oh, Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks guy, he's apparently running for her seat. So, California, you need your head examined.